The rain hammered against the windows of our little cottage in the Cotswolds, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. For 20 years, Bronwyn and I had built a life here, a life I thought was filled with unwavering love and mutual respect. I'm Gareth, 46, and I work as an IT consultant, a job that often takes me away from home for short periods, but never long enough to warrant the seismic shift I was about to discover. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Bronwyn, usually so open and communicative, began to withdraw. Her laughter, once a constant melody in our home, became infrequent, replaced by a quiet, almost melancholic silence. She started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom, and would quickly minimize the screen whenever I entered the room. I chalked it up to stress at her work as a librarian, a job she genuinely loved, but the feeling of unease persisted. One evening, I returned home earlier than expected from a business trip to Manchester. I had managed to resolve the client's issue ahead of schedule and was eager to surprise Bronwyn. As I unlocked the front door, I heard hushed voices coming from the living room. I paused, thinking she might be on a call with her sister, Lori, but the tone was different, intimate. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Bronwyn was sitting on the sofa, her hand intertwined with a man I had never seen before. He was tall, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes, and an arrogant smirk plastered across his face. They both froze, their faces etched with guilt and surprise. "Gareth," Bronwyn stammered, her voice trembling. "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, really?" "Because it looks like my wife is holding hands with another man in my living room," I said, my voice dangerously low. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful counterpoint to the icy dread that was spreading through my veins. The man stood up, his smirk fading slightly. "Look, mate, it's not like that." "Oh, please enlighten me then," I challenged, my eyes fixed on him. "How is this not what it looks like?" Bronwyn finally found her voice. "Gareth, this is Reese. He's a friend." "A friend," I repeated incredulously. "A friend who holds your hand and looks at you like he wants to devour you. Is that the kind of friends you have now, Bronwyn?" The air crackled with tension. Reese shifted uncomfortably, but Bronwyn remained silent, her eyes filled with a mixture of shame and defiance. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "How long has this been going on?" Bronwyn hesitated, her gaze darting between Reese and me. "A few weeks," she finally admitted, "a few weeks." The words echoed in my mind, each syllable a hammer blow to my heart. A few weeks of lies, of deception, of betrayal. 20 years of trust shattered in an instant. A few weeks. I repeated, my voice rising. "A few weeks of sneaking around, of lying to my face. How could you, Bronwyn? How could you do this to us?" Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Gareth. It just happened. It just happened," I scoffed. "Affairs don't just happen, Bronwyn. They're a choice. A conscious decision to betray the person who loves you most." I turned to Reese. "And you," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "You knew she was married. You knew you were breaking up a family." "What kind of man does that make you?" Reese shrugged, his arrogance returning. "Things happen, mate. Can't help who you fall for." I wanted to hit him, to wipe that smug look off his face, but I restrained myself. Violence wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't undo the damage that had already been done. "Get out," I said, my voice cold and hard. "Get out of my house." Reese didn't need to be told twice. He scurried out of the cottage, leaving Bronwyn and me alone in the wreckage of our marriage. I looked at Bronwyn, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman I had loved, the woman I had shared my life with, was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "I want you out of my house by morning." Bronwyn's eyes widened. "Gareth, please, don't do this. We can work through this. We can fix this." "No, Bronwyn," I said, shaking my head. "We can't. You broke something that can't be fixed. You betrayed my trust, and I can never forgive you for that." She pleaded, she cried, she begged for forgiveness, but I was unmoved. The pain was too deep, the betrayal too profound. I had given her my heart, and she had stomped all over it. That night I slept in the spare room, the rain still lashing against the windows, a constant reminder of the storm raging within me. The next morning Bronwyn was gone. She left a note on the kitchen table, filled with apologies and promises of change, but I didn't read it. I couldn't bear to hear any more lies. I spent the next few weeks in a daze, going through the motions of life but feeling nothing. The cottage felt empty, hollow, a shell of what it once was. I couldn't bear to stay there, surrounded by memories of a life that was no more. I decided to sell the cottage and move away, to start fresh somewhere new. I needed to escape the pain, to rebuild my life from the ashes of my shattered dreams. I confided in my closest friend, Alaric, a landscape architect who had always been a steady presence in my life. Alaric was shocked and supportive, offering a listening ear and unwavering encouragement. "You deserve better, Gareth," he said. "You're a good man and you don't deserve to be treated like this." Alaric helped me find a new place to live, a small apartment in Bristol, a city I had always wanted to explore. He even helped me pack and move, taking care of all the details so I didn't have to think about them. As I settled into my new life in Bristol, I started to heal, slowly but surely. I focused on my work, on my hobbies, on rebuilding my life piece by piece. I joined a hiking club, explored the city's vibrant art scene, and reconnected with old friends. One evening, a few months after my move, Alaric invited me to a local pub for a drink. "I want you to meet someone," he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. I was hesitant. The thought of dating again filled me with anxiety, but I trusted Alaric, so I agreed. When we arrived at the pub, Alaric led me to a table where a woman was waiting. She was beautiful, with warm brown eyes and a kind smile. Alaric introduced us. "Gareth, this is Isolde." "Isolde, this is my friend Gareth." Isolde and I hit it off immediately. We talked for hours, sharing our stories, our dreams, our fears. She was a teacher, passionate about her work and dedicated to her students. She was also intelligent, witty, and compassionate. As I got to know Isolde, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Hope for the future, hope for love, hope for happiness. We started dating and our relationship blossomed quickly. Isolde was everything Bronwyn wasn't: honest, loyal, and supportive. She made me feel loved, appreciated, and valued. One day, Isolde and I were having lunch at a cafe when I received a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me I should. "Hello," I said. "Gareth," a voice said on the other end. It was Bronwyn. My heart sank. I hadn't spoken to her since she left the cottage. "What do you want, Bronwyn?" I asked, my voice cold. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. "Can we meet?" I hesitated. I didn't want to see her, but I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. "Fine," I said. "Meet me at the park tomorrow at noon." The next day I arrived at the park, bracing myself for the encounter. Bronwyn was waiting for me, sitting on a bench, her head in her hands. As I approached, I noticed she looked, her eyes red and swollen. "Gareth," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for coming. What do you want, Bronwyn?" I repeated, my patience wearing thin. She took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize," she said. "I know I hurt you and I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. An apology isn't enough, Bronwyn," I said. "You destroyed our marriage. You shattered my trust. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay." "I know," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I regret what I did. I regret losing you." I remained silent, my expression unreadable. "Reese left me," she continued, her voice cracking. "He said he never really loved me. He just wanted a bit of fun." I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it was quickly replaced by a wave of pity. Bronwyn had been used and discarded, just like she had used and discarded me. "I'm alone, Gareth," she said. "I have no one. You made your choices, Bronwyn," I said. "You have to live with the consequences." I stood up to leave, but Bronwyn grabbed my arm. "Please, Gareth," she said. "Can't we at least be friends?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a broken woman, a woman who had lost everything because of her own choices. "I don't think so, Bronwyn," I said gently. "I need to move on with my life. I need to focus on my future." I gently removed her hand from my arm and walked away, leaving her alone in the park. As I walked, I felt a sense of closure, a sense of peace. I had forgiven Bronwyn, not for her sake, but for my own. I needed to forgive her in order to move on, to heal, to find happiness again. I returned to Isolde, to our shared life in Bristol, and never looked back. I had found love again, a love that was true, honest, and unwavering. One evening, a few years later, Alaric came to visit me in Bristol. We were sitting in my apartment, sipping wine, when he said, "You know, Gareth, I have something to tell you." I looked at him, puzzled. "What is it, Alaric?" He hesitated, his expression troubled. "It's about Bronwyn," he said. And Reese, my heart skipped a beat. What about them? I knew about their affair before you found out, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I stared at him, stunned. You knew, and you didn't tell me. He shook his head. I was going to, Gareth, but then I realized something. Realized what? I demanded. I realized that I was in love with Isolde, he said. And I knew that if you were still with Bronwyn, I would never have a chance with her. I was speechless. My best friend had deliberately withheld information that could have saved me years of pain, all because he wanted to be with Isolde. You manipulated me, I stammered. He nodded, his eyes filled with remorse. I'm so sorry, Gareth. I know what I did was wrong, but I was desperate. I loved Isolde so much. Rage surged through me, hot and blinding. I wanted to lash out, to hurt him the way he had hurt me, but I restrained myself. Get out, Alaric, I said, my voice trembling with anger. Get out of my house and out of my life. He didn't argue. He simply stood up and left, his shoulders slumped with shame. I sat there, alone in my apartment, reeling from the revelation. I had been betrayed not once but twice by the people I had trusted most. But as the initial shock wore off, I realized something. Alaric's betrayal didn't change anything. It didn't diminish the love I had for Isolde or the happiness I had found with her. In fact, it made me appreciate her even more. She was the one constant in my life, the one person I could always count on. I decided to forgive Alaric, not for his sake, but for my own. I couldn't let his actions poison my life any further. I called him the next day and told him that I forgave him, but that I needed time to process everything. He was grateful and promised to give me the space I needed. I continued my life with Isolde, our love growing stronger with each passing day. We got married a year later, in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. As I stood at the altar, looking into Isolde's eyes, I knew that I had finally found true happiness. I had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, and had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. I had learned that forgiveness is not about condoning the actions of others, but about freeing yourself from the burden of anger and resentment. And I had learned that true love can conquer all, even the deepest wounds. Years later, I received a letter from Alaric. He was living in France, working as a landscape architect, and was happily married. He apologized again for his actions and thanked me for forgiving him. I wrote back, wishing him well. I had moved on with my life and had no regrets. I had found happiness, and that was all that mattered.